I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. So this is a special meeting of the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority. And we'll start with a roll call, approximately 3:32, something like that.
Director Abrika?
Here.
Director Combs?
Here.
Director Eisenberg? Here. Director Pine?
Here.
Director Stone?
Here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to welcome everyone in person, our colleagues especially, and it is a hybrid meeting, so there are people who be able to join in through Zoom. And want to thank Menlo Park for getting us started on our rotation. So I think next month we'll be in East Palo Alto, and then Palo Alto, and we'll keep rotating every month. And yeah, also want to thank, I'm just going to say the first names, but some of the staff from Menlo Park who helped our staff to get everything ready. So I think Judy, Sarah, Nicole, Stephen, and Sokai. Hope I didn't mispronounce anyone's name, but thank you very much for setting everything up today to be in person. So let's go on with our approval of the agenda. If there are any requests for any changes, or if not, then we can proceed with that. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move.
Okay, moved in second. Roll call.
Director Abrika?
Yes.
Director Combs?
Yes.
Director Eisenberg?
Yes.
Director Pine?
Yes.
Director Stone?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And so, yeah, I also want to mention that our counsel today is Lori Liu. She's stepping in for our other member of the team that regularly covers our meetings, Trish. So thank you. And actually, I was going to ask, so now that we're back in person for voting, we can just say aye and nay, or we still have to do roll call for everything?
You can say aye or nay.
Yeah,
That should be
right.
fine, as long as it can be
Because
recorded.
we're so used to checking everything in Zoom and roll call. Okay. Our next item is approval of the minutes of January 26, 2023, which was our last regular meeting. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes themselves? Let's see, there's a request for this. Okay, if there aren't any, I'll entertain a motion also for the minutes.
So moved.
Okay, moved in second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, motion carried. Next item is public comment, so an opportunity for any member of the public to address the JPA board on any item that is not on the agenda, and have up to 3 minutes. And we do have one request, and that's from Jerry Hurd.
Good afternoon, members. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's all really good to finally see people in person and be back and be able to actually have conversations and stuff. I love it. This is I really appreciate it. Zoom works, but this is much more fun. Several comments. First of all, I don't know if people are aware of this, but last week, one of the groups that partners with us quite a bit, Climate Resilient Communities, won the Stanford Community Award for its work with Stanford University, and we partner with them in East Palo Alto, and they do outreach for Safer Bay and stuff like that. So I just wanted to mention that it's a great organization, and it's good to see them recognized. Another thing, I'm not quite sure, Margaret, whether it's going to be on the, so I'm just going to mention it anyway, is the scoping for the Searsville project has started, and comments are due in a week. I'm already writing mine up, and it's been a long time that we've been waiting for this. I mean, decades, and so I'm sure that and the timeline is pretty quick. I don't know whether they're going to meet all those deadlines and stuff like that, but it's really exciting to finally see this happen. And of course, there's potential large impacts on our projects down here. And the third thing I wanted to mention is one of our dear friend Trish Mulvey is, we found out, actually Tess and I worked to find out that she's been in the hospital. We're not sure why, but she is out now and is going to be coming back home. And I think it'd be nice if people wanted to drop her a line or something. And what I did is I printed up little things with her address on it. I'll just leave them back over in the corner. And if you want to just drop her a note, I'm sorry I don't have her email. That was kind of dumb of me not to remember that. Anyway, apparently she's doing fine, but we were really worried about her because we weren't hearing from her. So, and as many of you know, she's been involved in creek projects along San Francisco for probably 40 years, maybe 50. So it's just nice to know that she's doing okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that report and the cards, I guess, for Trish. Hope she's doing okay. Any other requests from the public, even if I don't have a piece of paper here? Okay. All right, seeing none. Our next section is the consent agenda, which is our regular schedule for the rest of the year, and then the comprehensive plan, which I think we have reviewed in the past. It's always open for modification, but any request to pull out either one for further discussion, I entertain that. And if not, then we can also move on that one. I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda. And
Excuse me, Director Chair, do we want to take public comment?
yeah, well, also, if there are any public comments, that, yeah, feel free, anyone at any time for any of the items, but, okay, seeing none, then,
Approval of the consent agenda?
yes. Move in second of consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carried. Okay, now we'll move into action items. And so, yeah, if you remember, our January meeting is usually when we do the reorganization. But I think we felt it'd be good to have everyone here. At the time, I think Supervisor Pine couldn't be present, so we're at that point. And yeah, so reorganization, both of the chair and vice chair, and then committee assignments. So at this point, I'll be glad to open nominations for chair.
Is there,
And-
Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Is there a place where,
yes.
is there a place where the job descriptions are available and the role descriptions as well as the role of the different committees? I couldn't find it in the packet.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I think we can probably get copies of that and kind of refresh our memories. I guess we didn't have that, but I think at least for the chair and vice chair, I was going to explain just briefly the procedures. People can nominate themselves. They can nominate someone. There's no need for a second. And then the committees, we do have a current list of them, and so I got I did request the list, but we got them here, so we can review those. And then we do have descriptions of what the committees do, and so I think tonight we don't have that handy, but we can certainly get that. So we'll make if you can provide those for us at that point. But so if we could proceed then, I think with the next step, which is selecting a chair and vice chair. So I'll open the nominations. Any nominations? Well, I'll make a nomination. I'll nominate Drew Combs as the chair for this. Okay, and so all those in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. So motion carried. So in your home base, Mr. Chair, I'll pass this on to you. And then we'll continue with the vice chair. You want to change chairs right now, or?
No, I definitely don't want to change chairs. Does that mean I take over the meeting right now?
Yes,
Oh,
right.
okay.
You are now the chair. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right.
Totally.
Kind of like that. Yeah. you're now the chair, and so we'll continue with the vice chair and the committees. Yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I'll open up for nomination for a vice chair.
I'll nominate myself. Since no one else has.
I've served in both chair and vice chair positions in the past. So,
Does that mean you want to be again or not?
Excuse me, can you speak into the mic? We can't hear
Sorry,
you.
I'm asking my colleague whether already serving means that it's time for someone else, or already serving means he should do it again.
I'm happy to, I don't have a need to serve. So, no. I'm happy to support your nomination.
Okay, thank you. So you seconded? Thank you.
Oh, I forgot. Okay, so then I think, do we do a roll call vote or just all in favor? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, right, totally cool. So,
Opposed? Anyone opposed?
yeah. Okay, so under action items, we have completed the board roles, and so now it's the committee assignments that we're going to move to. And so then we're just going to sort of go through and see if everyone is still, so I'll read through the list of what the current committee assignments are. So on finance is Dave Pine and Pat Burt, who's no longer. Personnel is myself and Ruben Abrica. And then the PIA, it's what is it? It's an association of other JPAs. And so I don't know that, and so it's me and Tess. And I don't know that I've ever been called on to act in any regard on that assignment. So, okay, so that's where we currently are. So finance, I guess. Dave, are we sort of opening up fully for like new nominations, or should I engage with Dave about whether he wants to continue in that position? Because obviously we need to replace Pat on the finance committee.
Correct.
My expertise is in finance.
Okay, so we have at least one nominee. Okay, all right, and so and Rebecca is happy to take the Pat's position, and so if there's no objection, if we're all in favor, aye. Okay,
Fine.
okay. Then we have personnel, and it's like I say, me and Ruben. Ruben, is it your desire to continue?
I'm willing to step aside,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
if
and
you're interested in have everyone involved.
and I'm the same. Like if Greer wants to.
Yeah, so and what is personnel committee?
So the only personnel that really reports directly to us is the executive director. So I think a lot of this has to do with negotiations surrounding the executive director's contract.
Okay.
And so I think that's a lot of what it is.
Yeah,
Someone
we
could-
facilitate a little bit the evaluation process, but fairly simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine with me. I can
Okay.
serve on that.
Okay, so, and Ruben, I would be happy for Greer to take my spot and for you to continue to serve our is.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I have more stuff, so I'll be happy to do that.
All right, totally cool. And then on the PIA, again, I'm happy to still continue. It has been no ask really, and so, but if there's anyone who's dying to do it, then that's fine with me. Okay. All right, so then we're fine with it, and everyone in favor of that. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Cool. All right. So did we do that, Nico, to your
Can we-
satisfaction?
Does the public have
okay,
any-
Can we assess the motion for who is going to be on the personnel committee?
Okay. Yeah. Let's. So the personnel committee is Ruben and Greer.
Thank you.
And we're all in favor of that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And no change to Aqua JPIA, is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that we're all okay with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, totally cool. Okay, so with that, we've completed everything with the public one. Yeah.
Does a public want to opine about committee or anything?
Do we do public comment for
Yes,
this?
we take public comment on all of our agendized items. Would anyone from the public like to comment on the board roles and committees? I see no request to speak.
Okay, totally fair.
Thank you.
All right, so then we'll move on to action item 6B, authorize the executive director to negotiate scope of work and contract terms for a survey of the creek channel not to exceed $45,000. And so Executive Director Bruce, do you want to provide a brief statement regarding this action item?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This item is in regards to an assessment of the creek post-storm impacts. The information item in the update on REACH 2 will provide a little more information about this. I am in conversation with our partners at Valley Water regarding their resources and expertise that may be available to support this. I'm also in conversation with our watershed partners at Stanford University who have an interest in the same information. At this time, having the flexibility and the authority to enter into a contract will ensure that we have the opportunities, one or more, to gain the information necessary for us to update our understanding of the creek channel and its performance. And that's why I'm asking for your authorization.
Okay, Director Eisenberg, yes.
Thank you. I just have two quick questions, maybe even just one. I don't want to underprice here. I want to make sure we get someone, who, the most qualified candidate. And I'm just wondering, is that enough authorization, do you think?
If it isn't, you'll be the second to know.
Okay.
I base the amount of money based on inquiries with our project partners, inquiries with staff, and similar kinds of surveys that have been done elsewhere, and think that this, together with support from our watershed partners and member partners, this will probably be sufficient. If it turns out not to be, I will be sure and let you know the developments associated with that.
Marvelous. Second question, quick question, and this I think you'll tell us more later too, which is just so to be prepared for the future, is it your understanding that the individual or consultant or firm will have access to everywhere that they need access to?
I don't know at this time.
Okay, and so you'll just come back to that.
I
Okay.
will absolutely keep you posted.
Great. So I fully support this item. Just wanted to ask.
Director Stone.
Thank you. So the staff report stated that we might be able to do the survey with Valley Water and Stanford. If that happens, would they share in the cost of the survey?
That is my goal.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, so this was one thing in working on the agenda. I spoke with Margaret because I know that there's modelings that takes place usually, and not that, well, I don't always trust modelings, but, I know that scientifically and every which way, that's the way to do. You do all the modeling stuff. But, I felt that doing something like this, actually a physical check into the reality of the creek, is very important because the event was so strong, so devastating in many ways that we hadn't seen in a long time. So it also, I think the public would probably feel a little better in a way because generally think people do understand that you do everything on the computer, you put all the factors and everything, but or have you actually seen the creek? I constantly get people telling me, I see this, I see that. And another related thing I'll mention, because I think is going to come up from the public, and as I remember, I think we have to get permissions from several agencies to go into the creek later on and actually remove stuff, And so my response was, when we get to that point, I think we might need your help in lobbying some of the state agencies. And I'm not sure how that happens, but I know that we can't just literally go in and start doing that. But that is one concern that I've heard from people. So anyway, I'm just throwing that up. But yeah, I think this is the time to kind of reevaluate, reassess everything we have assumed, whether it's modeling or in person, to make sure that whatever the JPA is going to do in Reach 2, especially, that it's really does protect people. That's what I think. So, thank you.
Just to remind everyone of the procedure, so this is an opportunity for the directors to ask questions of staff, clarifying questions, and then we'll have public comment, and then we'll bring it back for board discussion. So if you have any comments, save those for after public comment. Thank you.
I guess I was mixing mine because I did have a question. I was leading up to a question. So my question was, one specifically, if we're able to go in and clean up the creek, what does that take, to do? And you did mention already, but you said water district. So they're the ones sort of for the JPA have been doing the modeling, or is that going to be also with Stanford or? And because at some point I do remember that there was a little clash of those two models, and then they worked it out. But yeah.
The modeling will be done with our member partner, Valley Water. And to further clarify the creek survey question that you asked, we're going to start out with a survey of the bank tops, because doing a survey of the bank channel itself, we need to wait until it's dry enough to actually go into the creek channel. If we use the technology called LIDAR, any running water in the creek looks like solid stone to it, so we will not get an accurate profile of what the creek channel looks like as long as there's water in it. Regarding the vegetation removal and all of that, we will be coordinating and communicating more with Valley Water. Yes, they have a stream maintenance permit, and that permit relies upon the approval of many regulatory agencies. One of the things that we saw in the January storms was that a great deal of the debris that came down the channel probably originated in the upper watershed, well beyond the bounds of where we do our annual maintenance walk. And that was probably the result of many dry years, many weak trees, and an overburden of vegetation that had accumulated dead and dying from the drought.
Okay, let's call for public comment.
Would any member of the public like to speak on agenda item 6C?
Good afternoon, Dan. Jerry Hearn. When we started the Watershed Council many years ago, one of our main foci was to actually do some studies of the creek. We actually set out a long-range monitoring plan that was going to last for forever. And what it really called for is exactly this. It wasn't just to study it once, build a model, like you were talking about, Ruben, that then may change for a whole lot of reasons. But we recognized right away that we needed to continue these activities where you would go in and essentially ground truth your models and your information. Year after, not necessarily every year, but definitely after large events, and maybe during, I think we had to set out for like every 5-year period or something like that. Because the truth of the matter is it's a tremendously dynamic system. It changes, the weather changes, the climate changes, there's more building, there's more disruptions of all kinds, and there's no way to predict that really very accurately. You can get pretty close though. But what the getting close really depended upon more frequent modeling. And back then we thought, well, that's kind of pie in the sky. Nobody's ever going to do this because it costs money. So I wholly support what's happening here as a sort of a follow-up and just see what parts of the information we had are actually still valid and which parts aren't working, and then to make adjustments accordingly. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we have someone on Zoom who'd like to speak. Zena Hamner.
Yes, hello. My question is, how will this effort interact with the timing of the projects? As Jerry said, this is a complex system, and it has been studied extensively over the last 20 years and modeled, and we can keep studying it forever. But the projects need to happen, and we have enough certainty in many aspects of the project, such as the replacement of Pope Chaucer Bridge, that we need to make sure that these additional studies and modeling do not postpone the timing of the projects. So my question is, what is the interaction between this effort and the overall timing?
And just because I want to get obviously through all the public comment before I have staff respond. And so are you seeing any other?
Yeah, we have one more.
Okay, well, let's go through all of the public
Dick
comment.
Hill would like to speak.
No, I don't, not here.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
Okay, thank you. We have no more raised hands or comment card.
Okay, well then I will, I don't think I have to repeat it, but I'll ask the chair to respond to some of the questions, queries that came up.
So until we actually have the survey and know the implications of the changes to the creek channel, I don't know that we can answer the question about how much will it interact with the project schedule. It may or it may not. It's too soon to speculate.
Okay, well then, with that, I'll bring it sort of officially back to the dais and see if there's any comments or additional discussion to be had, additional questions or a motion on this item. I'm happy to move it myself and see if.
I'll second.
Okay. Yeah, I think Miko was gonna. And so it was first
So we
by
have
me
a-
and second by.
Okay.
Okay. And so, and I
Does
did.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
Do we have an approval of agenda item 6C? Does,
We have a first and a second.
okay, so, I'm sorry? No, yes, can we have each board member say aye at this time, please? If you approve agenda item 6C.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Is that, okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to informational items. 7A, study session of Reach 2. The Urban Reach 2 project extends from East Bayshore Road to just upstream of Pope Chaucer Bridge. Staff and project partners will present an update on the status of the Reach 2 project, impacts of the New Year's Eve storm, and what we're doing, project elements, planning and design, permitting access and easements and funding. And so with that, I will turn it over to staff.
Thank you so much, Chair Combs. Members of the board and community, today's study session on the Reach 2 project aims to provide a brief refresher on the project context and an update on the project elements. Joining me today are our project partners with Valley Water, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the City of Palo Alto. Their representatives will provide updates on their respective project elements, and I'll fill in the rest. Kevin is here also to make sure that anyone who has technical questions about the project has the benefit of his expertise. We look forward to the board's questions and discussion. So without further ado, as you're aware, in 1998, the creek flooded, damaging thousands of properties and impacting the lives of thousands of people. This spurred the creation of the JPA. As a practical matter, flood risk reductions must proceed from downstream to upstream. And so our work began in the downstream Reach 1 area. Reach 1 expanded the channel significantly. It took a very narrow and confined channel that flowed from Highway 101 to the mouth of the bay and opened it up so that now floodwaters that are in, it can accommodate floodwaters of 100-year flow plus 3 feet of sea level rise and a king tide. So there is tremendous capacity for the creek to convey water. It also reconnected part of a marsh to those flows, so there is an overflow area as well. That has enabled what are now high flows in the Reach 2 area to reach an open channel so that water doesn't pool as much upstream of 101. So the creation of and completion of the Reach 1 project also benefits the area in Reach 2 upstream of Highway 101. So that's what we'll focus on next, is that part of the project that goes from Highway 101 upstream to the Pope Chaucer Bridge.
Quick point of order. Can you please speak up? Just because my hearing is not always the best.
I can project. Sometimes I have to calibrate my voice because with the microphone, I'm sometimes not clear how loud I am. So thank you for the admonishment. I will speak up.
Not an
On
admonishment.
the slide, you will see the area in red. And for those of you who may be colorblind and can't see the red, it's the colored area to the top part to the north view of this screen, south of the word San Francisco Bay. Those areas, respectively, in East Palo Alto to the left and Palo Alto to the right, are now protected by the Reach 1 project. The area that is highlighted in blue, where you see Highway 101 transiting through the middle of that area, is the 100-year floodplain, according to FEMA. That is the area still vulnerable to high storm flows, and the flooding that we saw on New Year's Eve touched some of, not all of that area, but some of that area. The flow on New Year's Eve is estimated to be approximately a 50-year storm. Let's see, next slide. So the Reach 2 project has 4 major components that will be built. Working our way from downstream to upstream, the first element is the Newell Bridge replacement, and Palo Alto will be speaking to that in a moment. The next segment is channel widening. There are several parts of the channel that are naturally or unnaturally, because there's been some construction, some concrete structures built into the creek channel itself, are narrow and confined and create areas of backed up water. Top of bank structures exist on both the Palo Alto and East Palo Alto sides. These top of bank structures or flood walls are either a gravity wall along Woodland Avenue in East Palo Alto or saccrete structures behind the back fences of residences in Palo Alto downstream of Newell Bridge. And then the last component in the upstream area is the replacement of the Pope Chaucer Bridge. And Valley Water will be speaking to those last 2 items along with us. Next slide. The overarching project objectives of the Reach 2 project are to contain a 70-year flow, which is approximately the same flow that the creek channel saw in 1998. In the process of building this project, we cannot transfer risk downstream. So we have to do things in the right order, and we have to plan and engineer carefully for, if you open up the creek channel and send more water downstream than the structures can bear, you transfer risk, and we can't do that. And in all of those, we have to design a project that the regulatory agencies will permit. If it is something that will compromise the creek's ability to sustain steelhead, as it is now a steelhead or a federally endangered species, and this creek sustains a population, we have to be mindful of that and not compromise this habitat. So whatever we do, the agencies have to say, yes, that passes muster. So next slide. Project tasks, there are many, but some of the biggest ones fall into these 4 buckets. Regulatory permits, coordinating with our city partners for their permits, rights of way, and community outreach and engagement. So regulatory status for our permits. Draft permits have been submitted and comments have been received or are being received from our regulatory agency partners. Those are being integrated into a final packet that will be submitted this summer, and we anticipate having our permits by early fall, September. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has their own permitting process, so their part of this is handled in their process. And importantly, city permits, these are the entitlements from, for example, the city of Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto for not just work in the channel or work on the bridges or work in the community, it's also in tree removals and replacements. It's how all of those are being conducted. We want to make sure that each one of our city partners has the same opportunity to comment on all the pieces of the project, and that we are embarking upon this project with full city authorization and concurrence. And rights of way for channel widening and top of bank survey and construction access, as well as easement agreements. Right now, the most important component of that work is what are called permissions to enter. And that is simply being able to enter a property so that surveying work can be done to make sure that the project is aware of all structures, trees, and any kind of utilities that might be present that might be constraints to the project, things that we need to be aware of. There are many of these permissions to enter that we have obtained. There are some still outstanding. We are still working with and negotiating with property owners for some of that access. Next slide. Community outreach and engagement. This is particularly important. It includes for us our regular newsletters, presentations to community groups. I would suggest that if anybody is aware of community groups, school groups, or other venues where we can share information about the Creek project, we are very happy to go and provide that information and outreach. We'll come to you. We'll spend a little time in your various agencies' public comment periods and do a 2-minute infomercial on our projects and on the agency to keep you and your community members and your council or board colleagues apprised of the JPA. And we keep our website as up to date as we possibly can. And if there are other opportunities to share the story about what the JPA is doing, we will take those opportunities. We've offered office hours, and now that we're getting back in the swing of meeting in person, we'll probably open the doors at the JPA offices for open house and office hours. So if members of the community would like to stop in and ask questions at a regularly scheduled time, we can set aside time for that. In the future, as we have construction activities, it's going to be very important to have very close relationships with the community members and their representatives so that people who are concerned about construction impacts know that they have an ear and a voice. Next. And I would be remiss if we didn't spend a little moment here talking about the impacts of the New Year's Eve storms. There were, as all of you know, more breakouts along the banks, more breakouts in different places than our hydraulic models predicted, which thank you again for your support for the survey work. We're going to try and identify exactly where those locations were and then understand why things happened the way they did. The storm caused a lot of erosion, a lot of scour. Materials, sediments, sand, gravels were deposited in new places. And those changes in creek behavior are going to be an important guide to make sure we are designing the right project. If we have to change the designs, in what way, how much? And again, we want to make sure that we are doing the right thing, that we are designing the right project for the conditions that are actually present. That work will be done, that survey work will be done over the next 2 to 5 months. Hopefully the creek will dry out enough by midsummer for us to get into the creek and do a full channel survey where necessary as well. Next. All right, and I would invite my colleagues from Palo Alto to sit here in the hot seat and share with you their update on Newell Bridge.
Good afternoon. My name is Holly Boyd. I'm City of Palo Alto Assistant Director of Public Works. So I will provide updates today on the Newell Road Bridge project, including the status, the funding, and schedule. This project is primarily funded by the Highway Bridge Program, which is managed by Caltrans. That means everything that happens with this project needs to be coordinated with Caltrans. The Highway Bridge Program has paid approximately 88.5% of project expenses to date, with the matching 11.5% coming from our partners at Valley Water. There are 4 main items that our staff, along with our consultant, are working on now that all need to be completed before the project can go out to bid and into construction. So the first is completing design. Staff received the 95% plans, specifications, and estimate last week from the consultant and are in the process of reviewing them. Those documents will be used to help us complete the other items, including the right-of-way acquisition process and funding request. So the second item is the right-of-way acquisition process. Staff is working with Caltrans to approve additional funding for right-of-way acquisition approvals needed for temporary construction easements during construction. The right-of-way acquisition process is expected to take 6 to 9 months. While we are waiting for Caltrans approval, staff has already authorized the consultant to start the appraisals needed now to move the process along. And then also as part of the right-of-way certification, staff is working with utility providers whose services are located within the project area, including PG&E, to relocate power poles and adjust any services. The third item is permitting. The city is working in coordination with JPA staff and submitted a draft joint permit agreement last summer. The regulatories were interested in reviewing the San Francisco Creek project elements as a whole, so the 4 elements Margaret mentioned earlier. We have received initial comments from the application and are working towards submitting a revised application with the intent to accelerate permit approvals for the Newell Road Bridge. Again, as Margaret mentioned, completion of the permit is estimated for September. The last element is funding. As I mentioned earlier, all aspects of funding are approved by Caltrans. The current draft project construction cost estimate is $15 million. The estimate submitted to Caltrans and approved in 2019 for the Highway Bridge Program grant funding was $9 million. Staff will submit the application for the cost estimate difference upon finalizing our review of the cost estimate that we received last week, and then also request that Caltrans move up the funding from fiscal year 2026 to align with our expected start of construction. So with those 4 items in motion, staff anticipates to be completed this fall, allowing the project to go out to bid, and then a construction contract awarded in early 2024, with construction starting in spring 2024 and lasting approximately 18 months. So this would give the contractor time to mobilize and schedule the work within the creek to follow within the June to October window of permitted work. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. The next one, channel widening, and if we have Jamie O'Halloran on Zoom.
Our question's going to be saved for the end.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Great. Hi, my name is Jamie O'Halloran. I'm a project manager with the Army Corps of Engineers. I'll be providing an update on the Army Corps' work for the Reach 2 channel widening project. The status of this right now is that we are in feasibility. We are working closely with the JPA and Valley Water to put out the draft feasibility report. We are in a bit of a holding pattern right now with the recent storms that have come up, and Margaret talked to the survey work that's going to be done, and the evaluation of the model that everybody is relying on right now to develop the solutions to come up with a project that works here. So essentially, we've got about a 9-month duration remaining to complete the feasibility study. And with completion and approval of the feasibility study, that will allow us to move on to the next phase, which is design and construction. If we're able to resume in the next couple of months with putting the draft feasibility study and environmental assessment out for public review, then we should be able to meet the current scheduled construction timeline of channel widening in 2025. Our budget for the feasibility study is approximately $1.2 million. We are so far within that budget, planned to complete the feasibility study on track. So that is looking good. Let's see, the design and implementation phase, again, would occur in 2023 and with construction in 2025. So assuming again that we get things moving again back on track, we should be able to meet that timeline. And that's about all that I have.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks.
All right, next, top of bank features, and following that will be Pope Chaucer, and I'd like to invite my colleague Madhu Thumuluru from the Santa Clara Valley Water District.
All right, thanks, Margaret. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. Madhu Thumuluru from Santa Clara Valley Water District. I'm the Engineering Unit Manager. I'm here to provide you updates on the top of bank improvements. So Valley Water is currently working on the 60% design for this top of the bank improvements. As Margaret said, these improvements are between Neville Road and Highway 101. So on both sides of on the city of Palo Alto and on the city of East Palo Alto side as well. So we are, like I said, we are in the 60% design, and we are trying, our goal is to finish the design by October of this year. So, and coming to the funding, Valley Water is funding some of these projects like through Safe Clean Water, and we have allocated like I think $25.7 million for all these sub-projects together. So, and coming to the construction schedule, we anticipate to start construction in 2025 and finish it in 2026. So that's the update on this top of the bank. Let's move on to the next one. And Pope Chaucer Bridge, currently we are working on the 85%. We're working on the 90% design, and it is expected to be completed in April. And the final design will be ready by end of October this year. So, and funding, we already mentioned about the funding, $25.7 million for the entire, all sub-projects, all the 4 sub-projects we talked about. And as far as the schedule, so this Pope Chaucer Bridge will come in place like basically after all the remaining 3 elements are in place, like Neville Bridge goes first, and then the channel widening, and then top of the bank, and Pope Chaucer will be the last project that will be constructed. So the current plan is to take it to construction in 2026 and wrap it up in 2027. I think that concludes my presentation. I'll hand it over to Margaret.
Thank you, Madhu. In addition to the funding for those elements from Valley Water, we also have an HMGP grant, a Hazard Mitigation Grant Program grant for the Pope Chaucer Bridge that is under negotiation at the moment, but it is nevertheless awarded. We are looking at and considering an additional HMGP grant application for the top of bank features due to the disaster declaration that occurred as a result of the New Year's Eve storms. That would help defray the cost, again, if awarded, for the top of bank features. As you can see, these are our current project funding estimates. There are lots of caveats about the costs. Costs of projects have escalated in recent years. Some of that is due to the effects of the pandemic. Some of that is due to the effects of supply chain issues. Some of that is due to inflation. In the event that there are disasters or catastrophes, there's an awful lot of competition for construction resources. So if these were to go to bid and there was competition for construction resources, we could expect to see escalated costs. That's all speculative at this point, but those are many of the things that can inflate costs for construction. We are also, as you heard Madhu talk about, we are not at 100% design yet. So as we progress with our designs, there are both opportunities for efficiencies that can be learned and gained in the designs, and there are opportunities for, that's a new thing we hadn't considered, and now we need to add that to the list. So until we have our complete designs and until we have our bid packages returned to us by prospective bidders, we will not have a full and final cost estimate. We will keep you updated as these numbers continue to be refined and our margins are narrowed. We will continue to seek additional funding, whether through HMGP grants, state grants, perhaps congressional earmarks, and any other opportunities that come our way. The current gap, with all of those caveats, is around $17 million. That has lots of contingencies. Some of that has to do, the contingencies are with, for example, with the Army Corps of Engineers. If they get to the end of their 9-month study and the federal government says, this isn't as feasible as we hoped it would be, that funding wouldn't be available to us. We're pretty confident that it's going to be available to us, that the feasibility study is going to come up with a 2 thumbs up. But that is a possibility. So again, we will keep you posted as we learn more about our designs, more about our funding opportunities, more about the costs. And this is just another slide about the caveats. Some of the things that we have are more certain. For example, the Safe Clean Water funding is quite certain. DWR funding is certain. The HMGP grants are fairly certain. The Army Corps of Engineers funding is fairly certain. So again, with all of those caveats, please take that slide of costs, existing funding, and funding gap as the broad brush. Information about the project can be found on our website. As these project elements are further developed and as we have more to share, we will post again on the website and, of course, to you. And at this point, we are delighted to take your questions.
Thank you, staff, across multiple jurisdictions for those presentations. Okay, we'll start with the clarifying questions from the dais, then go to public comment, and then we get back to the dais for additional discussion. So, Director Eisenberg.
Thanks. These are clarifying questions that it wasn't very clear to me. Is 1, 2, and 3, do 1, 2, and 3 need to be completed to do number 4? I know that number 1 does.
Yes, and they can also, in theory, be done contemporaneously. So channel widening and top of bank can be done at the same time, in theory, and those things can be done at the same time as the Pope Chaucer Bridge work is done, in theory. We have to think about impacts to the community and what that much construction in that small a space would do.
It's just a clarifying question. Thanks. And additionally, clarifying question, is the Department of Transportation money lined up? Is it secure for Palo Alto?
I need to defer that to my colleague at the City of Palo Alto.
That what is she here? Yeah. I have actually a couple questions because this is the first part coming. It just clear again. These are just clarifying questions. Wasn't clear to me.
Sure. So the Highway Bridge Program, we've secured funding up to $9 million for fiscal year 2026.
It's been completely approved
Yes.
for fiscal year 2026.
Yes. So as part of our work with Caltrans, we are going in the next month or two going to be sending them an updated construction cost estimate based on what we received last week and asking for additional funding from the program and asking to accelerate the funding. So the Highway Bridge Program is very oversubscribed with projects. However, not all projects are ready in the queue to be constructed at the same time. So we feel pretty optimistic about this. We have lots of congressional support, including the earmark we just got from Senator Becker's help. So we feel pretty confident that we're going to be able to get the extra funding and the adjustment to the timeline.
You mean the state government?
With Caltrans, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that wouldn't be so that's a different funding source then, different from Department of Transportation, or it's or still Senator Becker is working with the Department of Transportation, or is that?
Well, Senator Becker was able to secure Newell Road Bridge project a $2 million earmark from the state budget. So that actually comes separately, but it does still get filtered through Caltrans. So the funding is separate. It is being administered by Caltrans, and we're in the process of signing the funding agreement, and we should be able to get that money soon. The other program, the Highway Bridge Program, is also administered by Caltrans, and that's where they have the funding programmed already for the smaller construction cost.
And is the design final?
It's almost nearly final. We got the 95% design. I don't call it 100 until we go out to bid. And we still are working through securing the easements for construction. So there might be some minimum changes, but very minimal.
So I was present at the site a couple times now, looking at it, and it seems that there are going to be I don't understand how this can be done without maybe eminent domain. There are private homes that literally seem to go right into the creek. So is that figured into the budget?
Yeah, that's part of the right-of-way acquisition process that we're going through now that we've just started. So what they'll do is they'll be doing appraisals of these property. We won't be taking any property through eminent domain. What we need is a temporary construction easement to build the elements. So say we need to build a small retaining wall at the edge of the sidewalk, but to build it, we got to go onto private property, but the element will still be on the public right-of-way. So we just need to enter into these agreements so we can go on their property during construction, but the improvement will not be on the private property.
So the creek isn't going to be widened on the Palo Alto side?
Not at that location. The bridge is being widened. The bridge is being replaced.
So, right. And but again, I was there. So I was told that the bridge is being replaced with a bridge that is wider
Almost
across.
double the side, yeah.
And I'm still a little confused how that can get done without encroaching onto private property, but maybe okay.
Yeah, go. You want to add something, Kevin?
Just add
It'd be
something.
helpful to see a map in an updated status,
The footings of the existing bridge encroach into the creek channel. So the widening doesn't happen by taking property on either side. It happens by widening the structure underneath the bridge deck.
Oh, what I'm trying to say is, so, again, I've been walked through this by community organizations, Crescent Park Neighborhood Organization, et cetera, and they showed me the bridge design they wanted, which was, didn't have, the current one I think goes bike lane, bike lane. So it's I'm talking about its width, how many lanes are on it, is significantly larger. And I guess it'd be helpful to see a map to see how that can actually happen without encroaching on private property, because it wasn't clear to me. And then And also that it wasn't clear also that it's going to be longer also, like the longer, which also doesn't seem possible without encroaching on private property. So again, I'm a visual person. So I think it'd be helpful to see a map, and maybe that'll be after, community comment, if there is any. So I guess and I can ask the question later unless it's a clarifying question. So it was confusing to me when I learned that this funding is coming from the Department of Transportation, because it's not, the problems that are driving the need for bridge replacement aren't transportation problems, right? They're flooding problems. So the agency doesn't seem like a perfect fit, for this. And while, maybe like flood mitigation agencies may have been possibly a better fit. So I guess, was the design built in order to please the Department of Transportation or in order to optimize flood protection?
Both. So Caltrans is involved because they've identified this existing bridge that was built in 1911 as structurally
For cars.
or functionally obsolete.
Right.
For cars, for pedestrians, and for bikes. I mean, for everybody. So that is why they're supporting this bridge to bring it up to today's standards. We are also raising the bridge to meet this goal of the 70-year storm. So even though Caltrans is footing the bill for most of it, it is because it's a functionally obsolete bridge. But we're meeting both the current standards today for transportation of all modes, as well as the flooding goals.
Well, I'm saying this because the goal of the JPA is not to help jurisdictions with, bridge functionality according to the Department of Transportation. Our goal is to protect the communities from flood. And so I'm still confused by this. Also, are you saying that the entire mechanical, physical change, the only physical change is to make it higher and not to make the span longer?
I believe the span is getting a little bit longer. The senior engineer project manager would be able to answer, but basically the bridge is going to align with the existing Newell Road. So existing Newell Road is a certain width, and the bridge is much narrower now.
Okay, do you understand that the Newell Bridge is going to be lengthened?
Yes.
The Newell Bridge has this, so the problem that is supposed to be addressed here is that both these bridges are acting as dams and the water can't get through. Mm-hmm. And the primary reason the water can't get through is because the hole for the water is too narrow, because the bridge doesn't have enough of a span, as is evidenced by the creek widening program. So if this bridge is only made to be as wide as the existing Newell Bridge, which is causing flooding, I don't feel confident. Sorry, this is more for, but I guess I'm saying, I think that the board really needs to look at the design, because I'm hearing that the community has some significant objections to this, like the neighbors. Not to mention that Palo Alto is currently in litigation from some of these neighbors. So I guess I just don't want, I think it's much better to overpromise and underpromise and overdeliver than the reverse. And what I'm hearing is that the funding has not at all been lined up. Right now, it's only for 2026, that the design may not solve the problems, and that, and that there seems to be kind of like a disagreement about whether or not the creek, or this bridge needs to be widened to accommodate, a widened creek. I would have given the timing of this, it would be helpful, I think, to see a design of it and how it's going to change. I'm very worried.
I'll turn it over to the project manager in a second. I did want to clarify, though, that we're no longer we did get a lawsuit that has been settled. It's already been settled last fall, so that is done. There's the Palo Alto.
The brand new lawsuits that were reported by the Palo Alto Daily Post just a few weeks ago?
No, that's not for the Newell Road Bridge.
But that's for the Pope Chaucer. It's not. Okay.
I'm actually not sure which it's for. I'm just going to say it's not for the Newell Road Bridge. We settled our issue. And I'm going to turn it over to Michelle Jeremiah, who's our senior engineer, the project manager for this project.
I do want to
But maybe we should get whatever.
chime in just to make sure.
Yeah.
The flow capacity does increase with the new bridge. So I think that that base understanding, I think that there is no disagreement. And if there is a neighbor who doesn't like the design, that's valid. They cannot like the design, and they can file a lawsuit. But I don't think that there is any technical, logical, engineering disagreement that the flow under what is being proposed increases. The water flow.
I mean, I just want to, I will believe them when they present that. It seems strange to me to have an update on a project that doesn't include the design for the project. That's all I'm saying.
This is just one update. There will be more. We're getting that, but I'll let the
Hi, my name is Michelle Jeremiah, Senior Engineer, Public Works, City of Palo Alto. I'm the project manager on the project. I've been working on it for the last 5 years. We completed a full EIR back in 2020. The EIR has been certified. It went through NEPA. Part of the EIR was looking at the impacts, like you're referring to, the width of the bridge, the length, the dimensions, all the impacts. That has been analyzed. We determined we advanced with one alternative. To get into the full details, I'm happy to provide additional information if needed at a later date. But to clarify the actual bridge, the bridge is getting longer, but the abutments that are currently in the creek and restrict the flow are being removed out of the creek. The new bridge abutments are actually going to be in underneath Woodland Avenue. So it's not getting necessarily longer per se. It's expanding into Woodland Avenue or Newell on the Palo Alto side.
I'm just thinking it'd be great to see just one slide of that.
I will provide something directly to Margaret and get shared with the board.
I mean, is there one you can pull up at this meeting for the community's benefit?
I don't know if we have one at the moment.
Chair Combs, we were not prepared. I'm sure that we can provide the board with detailed design illustrations and a map at Director Eisenberg's request in a follow-up presentation or a follow-up briefing for the board.
To be fair, I asked for that for this meeting.
right.
Yeah, when you get a chance.
And the last thing I wanted to wrap up, just to let everybody familiarize with, is this project, Newell Road Bridge, was part of a big project that included both bridges, creek widening at that point, the channel widening segments. The only reason Newell Road Bridge was bifurcated, because it was in 2012, Caltrans that agreed that the functionally obsolete bridge could be funded by Caltrans, 88.5%. So it's a project that was lumped together as a part of a much larger project, which would put the burden on all of us addressing and funding for it. But Caltrans agreed to help fund the project. They've been a significant player on the project, but their funding requirements also trigger having to go through the process, which is the reason why we are not only raising the bridge to comply and allow more flows to pass, but part of the bridge restrictions today, there's a site constraint. The bridge, the slope approach down to Woodland is too steep. Raising the bridge will address that from Caltrans.
What's the backup plan if the funding doesn't come through till 2026?
I don't foresee, there's no reason for me to think at this point that Caltrans won't move forward with a funding plan.
By this year?
I don't have a reason to think why Caltrans may not decide to fund that. We need to go through the process, which is, I think Holly went over and covered all the different phases that we're in. Caltrans goes through based on their phasing process. We're in the process to move forward with the right of way.
I was just told that the funding is until 2026.
Correct. That's what we've been told, but we need to provide, as Holly mentioned, we need to resubmit a request for additional costs, and we'll be doing that shortly and asking for it to be advanced to another date. So I can't speak for Caltrans, but I think we have no reason to think that Caltrans wouldn't allow us to move forward.
So what's the backup plan if they don't?
Do you want to, I think our backup plan, I think collectively as an agencies, multiple agencies, we've worked together on trying to move forward, not only during the last storm events that we've had this year, but moving all our projects forward. So I think collectively our agencies would agree with some sort of backup plan. That's my interpretation of it.
We're saying backup plan in terms of the funding.
Correct.
If the funding doesn't, but there is no, if anything, we're just talking about when the funding would arrive. And so at that point, the backup plan is that the funding will, like, the project may be delayed, but unless someone else is coming up with $11 million. And so that's probably not going to happen. But I know Director Abrika had a question or comment.
No,
and then we still haven't gotten the public comment on this. So
we need to take public comment first, because mine.
Yeah, because
If you have any more clarifying questions, this is the time to
Yeah.
ask them, and then turn it over to public comment.
Actually, at this point, I just want to go to public comment, and so we can remove that from the deck and give the public the opportunity to speak.
Would any member of the public like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, we have no one here in the chambers, but we do have someone through Zoom who would like to make a comment. Dick Held, would you like to speak now?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm a Palo Alto resident, lived here for many years. Flooded out in '98, and on New Year's Eve, we had water flowing freely through our yard, some seepage into our bathrooms. We have a 93-year-old neighbor who lives by herself, who remains frightened by the implications, not only of what has happened, but what some are projecting is to happen with the current storm we've got today and tomorrow. Another neighbor who just had to spend $4,000 cleaning mud out of her home from New Year's Eve floodwaters. I have sent 2 emails on February 10th and 21st to the JPA people, which have neither been acknowledged, nor have I received the courtesy of a response. So my questions are not intended to be unfriendly questions, but after 25 years, many of us, and all of the responses to my emails from the community were overwhelmingly positive, 100% positive. We just have reason to question the existence of any, after 25 years, sense of urgency on the part of government in addressing the issue. We speak endlessly, and you justify budget because of global warming. And here we have an example of global warming, and nothing has been done about it. Yeah, but forgive me, you have done something about it, and we're grateful for Reach One. I want to commend Mayor Abrika I saw on the news last night a clip of East Palo Alto putting sandbags up to supplement what has been done with the levees in an effort to protect the community from water potentially getting into homes and through their streets. Investing in hydraulic models, I understand, but what the first question is there any plan to use supplemental sandbagging around the Pope Chaucer Street Bridge, where we know that has been the source of the overflow in the past? Hydraulic models will not stop the water. Sandbags will stop the water. Is there any plan for following the East Palo Alto example and doing any sandbagging should it appear we're going to have a problem in the next couple of days? That's my first question.
So you need to ask all your questions because this isn't a Q&A. So your
Okay, that's fine. I can do it that way. Forgive me. My second question is, on page 5 of the comprehensive plan, it says replacement of Pope Chaucer will begin in 2025. On page 45, it says its construction is anticipated in 2023, 2024. I understood the earlier presentation to say 2025. I'd like a clarification as to when is it going to be? I was told by the previous executive director that it would be done in 2022. Once again, the sense of urgency in getting getting any kind of consistent responses to questions it just causes doubt amongst all of us who have trusted you for 25 years, but the problem has not been solved. My next question relates to the citizens who are objecting or denying access to their property. I entirely understand and support their having the opportunity to do as they wish, but I do question, but I fear we're going to allow perfect to get in the way of good, in the way of solutions. Is there not a way to proceed with the work that needs to be done and not deal with those properties? And should something adverse happen with those properties in the future, it will be a result of the choice that those people made. My final question relates to Newell replacement, which you were saying is planned for the summer of 2024. In the Palo Alto Council 2023 priorities, you still talk after 25 years about educating legislators, getting construction approvals, and securing funding. Please explain to me how after 25 years, we're talking about fundamentals like that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comment. Jeff Shore.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Hi, this is Jeff Shore. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I'm a Palo Alto resident. I attended the scoping meeting for the Searsville project that Stanford is proposing. And apparently one of the alternatives that will be addressed in the EIS would involve dam removal. So in that regard, are the downstream structures in Reach 2 being designed to accommodate the resumption of sediment transport, assuming dam removal? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Jim Wiley.
Am I on screen at this point?
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much. I want to speak briefly and congratulate you for including an update to the modeling for the creek, because the modeling that existed up till now did not reflect what happened not only on December 31st, but also did not reflect what happened in 1998. There has been significant flooding on the Menlo Park side downstream from the Pope Chaucer Bridge, and downstream in East Palo Alto on the San Mateo County side that has been not predicted by the model. So you're doing the right thing by trying to figure out what's wrong with the model and or what's wrong with the data that fed into the model. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Eduardo Pellegri.
Sure, Eduardo will do. So we moved into the Willows in 1998, just after that flooding. I know that there have been discussions since then. There have been discussions before that. I totally agree with the statement that there is a total lack of sense of urgency. I don't know why that is. I suspect part of it is rotating people involved in this process. I would strongly encourage the JPA to at the least provide a timeline of all the activities that have happened, so it's very clear what has happened, or more to the point, what has not happened. I see something like activity in 2019. I don't know what has happened in 2019 to 2023. I don't see any sense of urgency. I see the whole discussion that was happening before about the topic of the opening of the bridge or widening. That seemed like a total, something that was discussed a long time ago. We're going in cycles all over the place. At least put the timeline here so that we clearly understand where the time is going and why we're not making progress on this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Zena Hammer. You're still muted.
All right, you can hear me now. Overall comment on the urgency of these projects and support for moving forward as quickly as possible. Regarding the Newell Road Bridge, strong support for the design. It is a result of 10 years of discussions and detailed environmental review and approvals by all agencies. It is not appropriate to reopen the design questions at this point. Details on Newell Road Bridge are all on the Palo Alto website. The road length does not change. It is a little bit wider to meet minimum Caltrans standards. So that strong support for that project moving forward as quickly as possible. Thank you. And as well as all the other projects discussed today.
Thank you for your comment. At this point, we have no more hands raised.
All right, thank you. But before I turn it to staff to cycle through some of the questions, I want to more holistically respond in that, like, I mean, we hear the frustration and it's valid. I won't at all sort of discount it or disagree that the frustration, disappointment, even anger is not well placed. I will say, and again, my history with the JPA doesn't personally track back to the 25 years, but this agency did take the lead in a project for Reach 1 that was completed. So it isn't as if we've been sitting here twiddling our thumbs. And the fact is that government and action in this type and this state is a process of which lots of people have to be involved and consulted, and of which people can file lawsuits, which has happened, which has slowed this process, of which there is some disagreement in the community about, for every voice that spoke here and said, this needs to go more quickly, I can promise you, I can find a voice that says that this project shouldn't happen at all. And in some communities, in some governments, sectors, you can just push them aside. But that's not the way our system works. Those voices have to be engaged, and that makes a process go slower. And I can't change that. And no one on this board can change that. That is our system. That is the way it works. Someone can file a lawsuit. And we have had lawsuits. And so I do think that there has to be an understanding of that you know, your anger or your disappointment is not just this board, but it is your neighbors who see these projects very differently than you see them. I have some people, I represent the Willows community, who very much come to me and say, these things don't have to happen, and they shouldn't happen. And I disagree with them. And I have lost friends over this. So let's be very clear about our process and the way things work. I wish, you know, we could just, to some degree, build things, but that's not the way it works. That's not our system. And so I do think that that has to be acknowledged. I also wanted to say that, like, very specifically around, and I'll let staff respond, around the questions of supplemental sandbagging at Pope Chaucer. As the executive director spoke earlier, sandbagging does not make the water go away. It just moves the problem downstream. And so whenever you see that happen, that property right there gets protected to some degree, but there is likely more harm that's going to come downstream to some other property. And that is the problem. That is what happens when we just look at what is our problem and what is our solve, and we don't look at things as a community. And so, no, this is not an agency that takes oversight or involves itself in sandbagging. That is something that if municipalities decide that they want to do, then they can do that, and they can assume the risk that comes with that. Not only the risk from a legal perspective, but what I think is the risk with regards to integrity and reputation, that you're okay with creating a little moat around yourself and protecting your own property, and you're totally fine with distributing that risk downstream. And so I want to be very clear, again, sandbags does not make the water disappear. The water does not go away. It just goes someplace else. And so we need to be asking ourselves, where else does it go? And I'll let the staff go through and answer the question specifically.
Thank you, Chair Combs. You've addressed the issue with the sandbags regarding the comprehensive plan and the dates for the Pope Chaucer Bridge. We will attend to those, correct the dates to reconcile them with our current best understanding of the schedule of the project, according to the input of all of our project partners. With regard to the permissions to enter and the recalcitrance of or concerns of a few of our project neighbors, we are still in negotiations with them. We may not need permissions to for construction easements, or we may, but for preliminary surveys, it's important to have access so we know what we're facing, what we need to be careful about on their private properties. I'm hopeful that we can negotiate something with them that addresses their concerns, because ultimately our goal is to protect them, to protect their neighbors, and be respectful of their property interests. There are a few other permissions to enter that we are lacking, in part because there are some vacant homes in Palo Alto. There may be absentee owners who live in another state, in another country, and they're very difficult to find. So we are still pursuing access to those properties where surveys, particularly of the bank top area, needs to be done. And the question, there was another question about Newell Bridge, and please refresh my memory on what that question was.
Well, I asked, where is actually the design of it? I spent, before this meeting, I spent about 45 minutes going through the Palo Alto website. I only see a draft EIR. I don't see the final EIR. I looked for just like any kind of graphic of the bridge. I don't see any. Additionally, most of the documents on the Palo Alto website are several years out of date. There's no recent update within the calendar year 2022 even.
I think this was a question
that was my question, and so
thank you.
I just want to see I'm not objecting to the design. I just think we are entitled to see the design.
Chair Combs, this was a question that community member Mr. Held had about the Newell Bridge, and
what's my question?
I may not be remembering his particular
It was
question.
something about the summer of 2024. What was it confirming that was?
He asked when it's going to happen, which is what I was asking too.
So we will publish a confirmation. Of course, all of our meeting notes, our meeting minutes from this meeting will be published, and the recording will be available as well. But we will make sure that an update on the Newell Bridge is available for the community, and I'll work closely with our colleagues at the City of Palo Alto to make sure all dates are current and links to all project information are included in our report.
Including hopefully a final EIR, not just a draft one.
I wanted to speak to Mr. Shore's comment or question. Are we designing into our project an assumption of the Searsville Dam removal? At this moment, we are not specifically designing our projects with that in mind. However, we are very cognizant of the sediment load that is going to be coming down the channel after the Searsville project, whatever happens with the Searsville project. And we are in close conversation with our watershed partners at Stanford University in their planning work. They have, as was noted, just recently released their notice of preparation for their environmental impact report, environmental impact statement work. Just before this meeting, they announced their CEQA NEPA leads announced an extension of the comment period. So it is now a deadline of April 7th. We are working closely with our JPA member staff and colleagues to review their scoping plan and their notice of preparation, and will be commenting well before that deadline. We are very concerned that all aspects of sediment transport and sediment deposition that may happen as a result of the Searsville project are taken closely into consideration. They will have an impact on how the creek performs, how the creek behaves, and where additional risks of flooding may occur. Their modeling and our modeling must be seamlessly aligned, and I think we have a close enough working relationship with Stanford at this time that I'm optimistic that all of that information exchange and planning can go forward. It's going to be, how should we say, an involved relationship to make sure that that continues to occur. I wanted to speak to Mr. Wiley's point about that we're checking in, that he appreciates that we're checking in on the modeling. I appreciate his support. I'm glad that he agrees and understands that we want to make sure we have the best information possible to inform our design work. I didn't catch his last day, but Eduardo asked for a timeline of actions, what has not happened and what has hampered progress, as well as what our project schedules are. We can include that in a staff briefing to the board to have published along with perhaps the next executive director's report. And I think that covers all of the responses to public comments at this time. And Ms. Zanny Hammer said to move forward as quickly as possible. We concur.
Great, thank you for those responses. Director Abrika.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up actually on the last comment and focus on the Newell Bridge because, yeah, I think Chair, Komju expressed, I think, what the public is expressing, and at the same time sort of clarifying the process and, where we are trying to overcome delays and speed it up. So specifically on the Newell Bridge, I live 300 yards from the bridge. I love the bridge. It's a beautiful little bridge. It's so old, it's dangerous. I personally do not want to revisit the design. Why? Because there were several years that were spent just on that. And I know many of our neighbors in East Palo Alto participated. I want to thank Palo Alto for actually having voluntarily done an EIR, which was not required. That was my understanding. Is that correct?
I did not say I objected
No,
to it.
I want to hear from Palo Alto because that was my
typically-
recollection, and maybe it's
yeah.
wrong, but
So typically an EIR is not required
Yes.
for a bridge replacement.
Okay, good. Thank you.
However, due to the concern from the community, that's why
I
Palo
understand.
Alto did what.
That's all I'm saying, that I think that area has been reviewed very thoroughly. I saw plenty of graphics. We saw all kinds of designs. We heard from the Crescent Park people, from the, East Palo Alto people. And I'm satisfied personally that that is probably the best design that can serve both purposes, to replace an old bridge and then at the same time help the JPA with the whole flood management. What I am concerned about and what I do want to focus on is the presentation today, which I sounded fairly optimistic, which is good. There'll be enough funding. Things are moving along, and we'll try to get the bridge replaced as fast as possible, because I think that is what needs to be done. That is, in the sequence of events, the next thing that needs to happen. And I think, Margaret, you were saying, theoretically, all those things could happen simultaneously if we had, all the money, we had everything. Although even then, I think we have to be cognizant of the disruption that it causes to people and traffic. So I don't want to do everything at once. But Newell Bridge, in my mind, is the next thing that needs to be done. And so, again, I think we can get copies of all those materials, but I personally don't want to spend my time on the dais here reviewing the design. And what I want to review is the funding that Palo Alto has been presenting, their prospects, and anything that all of us can do. We can lobby the state, we can help, because I do feel that it is important to get this bridge done as soon as possible. So that's, I just wanted to speak on that. I know there were other issues involved, but I feel like that is the next step. That is the next step for us to complete as soon as possible. Thank you.
Director Stone.
Thank you, Chair Combs. Thank you, staff, for the presentation. Just so a few questions. First, on tree removal. The staff report mentioned kind of location and number of trees along the creek may need to be considered in the project plans. Do you think that means potential significant removal of existing trees? And then kind of, well, I'll let you answer that, and I have a follow-up with that.
Yes, and I'm going to pass the microphone to my colleague, Tess Byler, who is our tree lead on the Reach 2 project. Good news, bad news. The storms of the early January storms took out a number of trees along the bank tops. So that's the bad news. The good news is that makes it easier for us.
Yeah, we hired, name is Tess Byler, work for the JPA. We hired arborists to assess all the trees within the project footprint and even beyond it. And they assessed about maybe 600 trees. And of those 600 trees, there's about 295, maybe 300 that have the potential to be removed. And I can't quote for the numbers. I'll put the correct number in the minutes, because the numbers change. And the way that I will do it is by city and the number of trees. But all of this information is available in our arborist report, which I thought was on our website. Yeah.
Wow, okay, so potential for 50% tree removal.
Potential for, but that is, I think, based in also still unrefined or unfinalized project designs. So some types of, for example, channel widening would have greater impacts than other types, and those designs are not final yet.
So the two biggest areas for tree removal are along Pope Chaucer Bridge, because of the oak trees that were planted on the concrete culvert in the 90s. The second biggest area of trees, and it might even be the first area, is where we're going to be removing a large concrete structure along Woodland at Site 2 widening. And it's a huge concrete structure. Trees have grown up in there, and those trees, many of them will need to come out. I have worked with the arborist and our design team to save several trees that the arborist felt were excellent examples for. There's a huge buckeye along Woodland, and we are doing everything we can to preserve that beautiful tree that hangs over Woodland. We also will be doing replanting, a lot of replanting.
Okay, I appreciate the work the work being done to save that tree. So I understand some tree removals for bridge replacement and some areas of the widening, but the report mentioned something about kind of removing trees based on what types of trees came down during recent floods, and wasn't quite following the reason for that.
Okay, so you might be talking about the recommendations in the comprehensive plan this year, and it has to do with the amount of trees that have grown up in the creek. And there's a lot of invasives, and every arborist that I've ever spoken to in the last 5 years at the JPA has said the best thing for this watershed would be to have a large-scale invasive species removal program. And so it would target acacia, things that clog the creek. And then, of course, during the floods, a lot of the eucalyptus came down.
Okay. So invasive tree removal, all right. I feel like I recall reading it in the Reach 2 project, but I guess I think a couple of concerns on tree removal, and if whatever we can do to mitigate that as much as possible, so important. And given creeks are natural habitat with the trees as well, that's going to be really important to preserve. And also, if one of our objectives is to ensure that we have all city approval by December, I can definitely speak with experience that, especially on the Palo Alto side, significant tree removal will be a big impediment to that goal.
We are closely working with our city colleagues on this and are prepared to do the mitigations that are necessary.
Great, thank you, that's helpful. And Chair, do you want just go through all questions now? Okay.
Can I ask a quick follow-up to yours, just because I'm so grateful to my colleague, who,
Fine, if it's fine with the chair.
I also live in Palo Alto, and I share, the vice mayor's, questions. And so can you just help me understand what exactly is mitigation for replacement of a mature tree? Because we all know and we all agree that it is impossible to replace a mature tree with a baby tree with any similar results. And also, I guess, mitigation with regard, I just want the top line, what it looks like, and also.
I do want to just chime in and I'll have staff answer that question. And I think these questions are very valid, but I do think it's an important point to be made here. You know what would make the project go more quickly? If we didn't care about the trees being removed.
Okay, but we do care about the trees.
Okay, so then but then you say that you see no sense of urgency. And so this is the problem, right? This is our process, that you have an in-depth discussion about tree removal, and that you're concerned not about the tree removal, but the removal of mature trees and how that they are accounted for. But you know what would make a project go more quickly? If you didn't have to worry about it. You just remove the trees that were in front of you that needed to be removed. And so this is the problem. And then you get to sort of essentially beat up on staff and suggest that there is no urgency, and then 1 minute create this whole new scheme that you think that they've not taken into account enough of.
No, Chair.
And that is the problem. And I'll be very clear, I'm not going to sit here meeting after meeting and be quiet for it.
Okay, but A, that is slowing this down, and B, my objection very clearly was to the fact that funding is not approved until 2026. That was my complaint, and I think that has nothing to do with trees.
What you said, that there was no urgency.
That was the public speakers, and
which you
I'm
agreed
brand new. I mean, I agree with a lot of it, but I didn't say it here, and I don't appreciate it when someone puts words in my mouth and then chides me for saying things I actually didn't say. So I respectfully, Chair, I would appreciate not being spoken to so harshly based on what you believe are my thoughts. So yes, I am brand new here. So I am withholding those kinds of general statements for a reason, because I am not yet up to speed, which is exactly why I continue to ask for the final design of this bridge, not because I object to it, not because I intend to slow it down. I'm not saying I have any objects to it, at all, hesitations with it. I'm saying that to do my fiduciary duty, I need to see it. And I don't understand why there's pushback. I cannot do my fiduciary duty and also take someone else's word for it. It is reasonable for me to see the final design of the bridge. I'm not saying I'm going to reopen it. I haven't said any of that. I just want to see it. And that is actually a very reasonable request. I just want to see it. And that's all I said. I don't know enough to have I don't anticipate objections to it, but my constituents are asking me, what does this bridge look like? And I am saying, I don't know. So, again, I'm very visual.
Have your constituents been paying attention? Because this has been something, a process that's been going on.
I don't care if they're paying attention or not.
They have to be, but then you're like, I don't care if they're paying attention, but then they get to ask stupid questions.
No, Chair, can we move on?
Yeah, I don't really appreciate being personally attacked like that, or my constituents being
We understand, but we do have members of the public watching right now.
Yeah,
so can we move on with the continued agenda?
Right, and Palo Alto's website is not up to date. So all of those things are just, it is not too much to ask to have the website updated.
Thank you, Chair.
So staff can answer the question about the trees.
So each of the three cities has tree.
Wait, I didn't finish my question.
Oh, okay.
So the question is how to mitigate the trees, and then also how to mitigate, the other benefits that the trees provide, like holding in the banks.
Yeah, so Palo Alto replaces canopy. So that's what we will be replacing. So the number of trees could be much larger, and we will just follow the canopy replacement.
With baby trees? I don't understand.
There's different sizes, and it's the same with Menlo Park and also East Palo Alto. They've all upgraded their tree ordinances to specifically target heritage trees of a specific size.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of the Palo Alto tree ordinance, but what is going to be done about the fact that removal of trees accelerates erosion?
Well, the banks will be stabilized and replanted, not just with trees, but with other native planting pallets that are appropriate for the creek.
And all that is built into the budget? Okay, that's really my question. Thank you.
She doesn't need more.
And can we go back to Director Stone's questions?
Great, thank you, Chair. Just a couple more questions. So I know the objective of Reach 2, provide protection for a 70-year flood, such as like the 1998 flood. I'm concerned though, and kind of curious feedback here. With global warming, it seems like these floods, the threat of these floods are going to become more and more likely. So, I guess by setting out, being the goal being a 70-year flood, do we think we're going to be able to address the increased flood frequency that might be likely over the next several decades?
So that's not an easy question to answer, but it's a very important question to ask. We will probably see more intense storms, as you're probably aware. As atmospheric temperatures rise, the air can hold more moisture. There's the greater potential for more intense precipitation events. The design for the 70-year storm had to do with a great deal of back and forth with the community. When this project was being designed, and maybe I could defer to my colleague Kevin for some of the history about this. When the project examined what would be necessary for a 100-year storm level protection, the community was not okay with that. That was, actually, at this point, I could turn it over to Kevin because he was there for those discussions.
So we did initiate an environmental impact review and report for a 100-year storm level project, and it was largely rejected by the community. Reason being is it would have impacted the entirety of the creek. I mean, you probably know that there are several streams in Santa Clara County and San Mateo County that are concrete lined, and people just don't accept that anymore. So we had to do a regrouping and come up with a project that was meaningful, it had benefit, but also achievable, meaning it impacted the least amount of creek channel possible.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So I think the community outreach plan, really good. I do think that's going to be a major component here to be able to get the community buy-in and hopefully be able to help some of those remaining holdouts that we have as far as private property owners go. The only thing I was a little concerned about was the report mentioned that office hours will be held during the day. Seemed like that is a possibility to at least provide some limited office hours in the evening or weekends for those who aren't able to make those
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. And then one last one, and then I'll turn it over. I think a lot of us would like to be able to see Pope Chaucer Bridge be replaced as soon as possible, but understand, at least the report says, can't be replaced until the creek is widened. Can you explain just the reason why that is for the public? Because I've talked to some community members who didn't quite understand that reasoning.
Sure. The most eloquent speaker on that particular point is my colleague, Kevin.
And can you show a map where it's going to be widened too?
We don't have the capacity to bring up other images than what's already loaded.
Then can you describe exactly where it'll be?
Sure. So the Pope Chaucer Bridge is the upstream-most constriction that will be addressed. There are several locations downstream from there where there's not enough room in the channel to carry the water that would pass through if they weren't widened first. And importantly, we're not able to take both Newell Road and Pope Chaucer Road bridges out of service at the same time for traffic impacts. And so the logical progression is to work from downstream up. So that would be Newell Road first, and then the widening sites, and then Pope Chaucer Bridge last.
Great, thanks. And a follow-up then, so the report stated that the widening is really dependent on the ability to gain access to private property and these easement agreements, and just in addition to the Army Corps of Engineers, their internal processes. So I guess is it safe, and kind of I think reaffirming kind of what the chair said earlier, is it kind of safe to say that from the JPA's perspective, we can really be ready to move on creek widening as early as 2024, but that timing is all dependent on some of these private residents and then other agencies?
Yes, that is right.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Can you please explain where it'll be widened and whether it's going to be on the Palo Alto side or the East Palo Alto side?
Yeah, there are 4 widening sites, 3 of which are on the Palo Alto side and 1 is on the East Palo Alto side.
And the Palo Alto side, I imagine there's private property there?
It's all private property, yes.
But earlier, there was a comment that no eminent domain would be necessary. So how do you widen the creek without eminent domain?
I don't think anybody has been talking about eminent domain. We are along, the city of Palo Alto has commenced, has commenced with whatever easements and access agreements are necessary for the Newell Bridge. For the channel widening and for the top of bank work and for the Pope Chaucer Bridge, we are several steps away from even entertaining that conversation. We are looking at permissions to enter, which is the basic, we need to survey this property to make sure that we understand where key features of that property exist in space. Where are there utilities? Where are there structures? Where are there buildings and, maybe underground things like pools? If the project is to avoid impacts to those private property features, we need to know exactly where they are. So we're going through that process to make sure that we have access to the properties to understand exactly what we might encounter, where it is, and what we can do to avoid it.
But how, I guess I still don't understand how the creek can be widened without impacting either the expensive property owners of expensive property in Palo Alto, or else East Palo Alto. And I guess I would like to hear assurance that it won't just automatically be done to East Palo Alto, when really the better solution is Palo Alto. Even though I live in Palo Alto, I don't like the idea of just, trampling on the rights and interest of East Palo Alto.
Sure. The bank in Palo Alto on the Santa Clara County side of the creek has a maintenance easement that belongs to the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Within that maintenance easement, a lot of work can be done. The construction can be done, maintenance of existing bank structures like the saccrete systems that are in place to armor the channel wall now can be maintained, and work can be done in that easement already. What we're talking about is if there is a need to do, as Michelle said from Palo Alto, if there is a construction requirement where we need to access private property to do some of that work that might need to happen not from inside the creek channel, but from up on top of the bank, maybe there's material that needs to go there, or maybe there are structures that need to go underground, pending design finalization. We need to know where on those private properties things might get in the way. So we need the survey access to get that information first.
Just looking at these properties.
At some point, we have to move. At some point, we do have to move on.
Right.
It is not.
But no one is answering my question.
Well, then at some point, we have to move on. I'm not going to be here until 8 o'clock because you don't feel your question was answered.
My
At some point, we have to move on.
constituents are asking these questions, and I am going to represent them. If you don't want to stay,
I'm going to ask staff to really, like at this point, you have asked a lot of questions. I believe that.
I asked them all in advance of this meeting. I was told there would be a deep dive. Don't worry, Rebecca, there'll be a deep dive on this project at the meeting, and that's what I promised my constituents. I don't think this was a deep dive.
If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
But these are questions from my constituents, and I do not take lightly to being told that my constituents cannot have their questions answered. And I'm sorry that this is inconvenient to the chair, but this is really important. People's homes are being flooded, and their family homes are being flooded. Everything they own is being destroyed.
I think
I think these are legitimate questions. I think it would be helpful to have a map showing what the proposed sites are and how this is going to be done, because if it's not actually going to widen the creek, then that's okay. I might be just confused, and I'm open to the fact I'm being confused, but I don't feel like this is, I can't go back to my constituents with these without answers.
We've presented a map of the widening locations on several occasions, and we can post those presentations on the website and provide them in the next board meeting's executive director's report for your reference.
Thank you. I mean, that's all I'm asking is for more information. I'm not necessarily objecting, but I can't do my fiduciary duty if I don't see this stuff myself. And that is, I don't want to tell constituents, oh, just take our word for it. That's not good government.
I would only say there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of pages on these projects.
So I don't want thousands and thousands posted. I just want maps. Like, I just want overviews that are visual and easy to understand. I don't need the thousands and thousands. That's not helpful to my constituents. Just like overviews that are visual and with maps.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question this evening concerning the Newell Bridge. I'm still confused about the funding status there. The slides suggest that we have a $6.5 million gap. So, when is that gap plugged in order to commence construction on this critical segment?
So the gap that's shown in that table is the updated cost estimate that staff did to prepare a grant last fall. So that is the gap. We're confirming the cost estimate that we just received from the consultant last week, and then verifying that it actually is a $6 million gap. And then we will be submitting to Caltrans, as part of the Highway Bridge Program, an additional funding request for whatever that gap is.
And we're confident they'll fund that gap.
We're confident that they'll fund the gap up to the 88% that they have been to date.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Chair, I'm going to have to excuse myself in about 10 minutes. I apologize.
And I just wanted to address one more thing. So the documents, Director Eisenberg, that you requested, the final EIR and the ARB approved drawings, are on the Newell project website. I did forward the links to Margaret so she can get those to you as soon as possible.
When I looked, I couldn't find them, so I must have been looking in the wrong place. So I appreciate that, and I will pass that on to my constituents. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from the dais? Okay, there's no action item here. It's informational. And so we'll move on to 7B, the Executive Director's report.
My report's very brief. The only other project update I have is for Safer Bay. On Friday, we were awarded by the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority an additional $3.98 million, in addition to the $1 million that the SFBRA had already funded us for the Safer Bay project. This will enable us to complete CEQA for the entire reach of the project. That's all of Menlo Park and all of East Palo Alto at a programmatic level, and a significant portion of East Palo Alto at a project level that will get us to preliminary designs for the entire project, and 30% designs for a significant portion of East Palo Alto, as well as the Ravenswood Ponds 1 and 2. So staff is going to be preparing some action items for the board at the March 23rd meeting, and you can anticipate those as being part of your packet. For an operations and admin update, very briefly, we are going to soon implement NetFile, so all of us Form 700 filers can do so electronically. So that concludes my report.
Are there any questions from the dais on the Executive Director's report? Okay, we can call for public comment on the Executive Director's report.
Would any member of the public like to comment on the Executive Director's report at this time? No one has requested to speak.
All right, thank you. So moving on to agenda item 8, board member comments, informational items, requests, and announcements. Are there any board member comments or requests? Okay, seeing none, then.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah, so just kind of reiterating, I would love at some point an actual deep dive to just bring me up to speed about these projects. I recognize I'm new, and I'm sorry that causes inconvenience to my colleagues, but I need to be brought up to speed. And especially, I guess on the Finance Committee, so I'll see it there, but I especially really want to get a handle on the state of finance, because even if the Department of Transportation is providing 88% of the funding, I guess I'd like to really, I'm a visual person. I just love deep dives. That's all. That's what I'm asking.
I would welcome an opportunity to do a deep dive for both you and Mr. Stone, who are both new to the board, so I can provide the brain dump for both of you and catch you up on everything. Regarding the Finance Committee's review, the Finance Committee's role is to review the JPA's budget itself, not for our projects, but for our operational budget. So you'll be seeing a thin slice, not the project budgets, and not Palo Alto's Newell Road Bridge budget. We don't play in that sandbox.
Right. Because so many of our projects so that's fine about the Finance Committee, and thank you for the clarification. I don't object to that. Because so many of our projects rely on that getting done, I'm just getting a lot of questions from people, about when is this Palo Alto project going to be done? And, projects can't be done until the money's there to do them. So that just seems like a better, it's not saying people aren't competent or that the design is bad. It says can't do the project till the money's in the bank. So that's all. Just being kept appraised about this would be helpful.
I will reach out to our Palo Alto colleagues and make sure that we are informed of any opportunities we have to support their requests with Caltrans and add our voices to the chorus so that we know that Caltrans is fully aware of how important this is to all of our communities.
Thanks, and I do think it's worth pointing out that for the Newell Bridge replacement, Palo Alto is the lead agency. And so if residents of Palo Alto have questions about the project, then they should go to Palo Alto, their city government, which is the lead agency, and to their elected officials in Palo Alto, which again is the lead agency. Director
I was
Bricker.
going to just make some brief comments on that note. Actually, our agency, it's already kind of a hybrid agency, and we don't have authority over everything. We're not responsible for everything. But to the degree that we support each other's agencies when they're working on the creek, and this sometimes is Valley Water, sometimes it's Palo Alto, sometimes it's us and East Palo Alto, and the whole Safer Bay. I think we were the ones who sort of initiated that with Menlo Park, and there was some reluctance from Palo Alto, and then Palo Alto joined in, because I think that the people with the money are looking at us also in a way. If we're not sort of hanging together, they'd rather give it to somebody else who's going to get the thing done if we're just going to, be at crosshairs all the time. So, I remain optimistic that we need to do this work and that we can speed it up to the degree that, we can find the resources. At some point, we'll have to deal with some formula to make it happen. There's always some tension with money. Other than that, I do want to say to, the new board members, since we get used to different combinations, that I'm definitely not one to shy away from questions. But I do want to say, one, I don't appreciate being interrupted. So I'm telling you directly, when I'm speaking, I will try not to interrupt you, because that way is sort of stealing my opportunity to express my voice. All of a sudden it shifts over to that. And I don't appreciate that from anybody, and I don't like to do that to other people. And second, I think, we do need to support our new chair, because it is a tough job in a way, and especially now that there is so much pressure because of the events that have happened, that, something is happening, and we're all worried about it. We all want to do the best that we can, and to not delay things in a way that the public itself is looking at us like, you know, why aren't you doing it? And so, anyway, but, you know, that is government. The last thing I'll say is that, you know, I'm a great believer in local control, but on these flood management issues, I always felt from the very beginning, it's like nobody is responsible. The way our system is set up, it has a lot of strengths, but that's a weakness. Like nobody's responsible for these things. Every city is supposed to do their own little thing. How can you deal with nature that way? You can't. So the fact that we formed this agency and that we stay together is really the only way. There is no other way. And so anyway, so I just want to say that. And I'm sure we can all keep moving along. That's all. Thank you.
I think on those words, I think we should adjourn. We can all keep moving along. Thank you.